Liability than a police officer using a taser, police officer using his firearm. There is no greater liability with a dog than any of those issues.
Council, I hear you. There's a question referred to you. I hear like items being put on the agenda referred to a lot. So we can't get an item put on the agenda then.
I mean, there are strategies for using your city charter and rules and procedures in order to have a meeting, to have so, I mean, there are ways to do it under state law, your charter, and rules and procedures. So, I mean, I don't think we can resolve it this evening, the specific things that you're saying you wanted to see if we didn't see it. But, you know, as I'm saying, you do have tools to use to have an agenda with certain items that a quorum of the council wants to have on the agenda.
Council, let me ask you a question. In terms of, as you so eloquently stated, we as non-sworn folks on the T-Code, we can't tell the chief how to run his department. And because there are no funds attached that are out of budget for training, those type of things, how would, in going forward, because we want to do it what's right, but at the same time, what is chief asking council for approval for if we can't tell him what's not his job? I'm confused.
Right, so this is the same thing. I mean, a dog, I know probably have animal lovers out here, but a dog is considered a piece of property, okay? And so this wouldn't be any different than giving a donation of a police car. The police chief alone does not have the authority to accept something of value for the city.
Can you say that
so,
again? You said he does?
Councilman Rowe, no, you don't have the floor. Would you hold on?
Okay, he does, I said,
No,
he
she's
does
speaking.
not,
You
he
cut
does
over
not
her.
have the authority to accept something of value on behalf of the city. The city council has the authority to do so if a quorum accepts it.
Okay, so that's what we're couching, put on the agenda, that him to be able to accept
And
this
I would
piece
say
of property.
at this point to ratify it because unfortunately it's out of order, meaning we already have possession of the animal and we don't have formal approval of the donation. And a lot of agencies, and I'm not sure about the Sheriff's Department, Harris County or
Harris County.
whether or not they have a donation agreement, but a lot of agencies have a very short donation agreement that says, basically, we're giving you this as a donation for law enforcement purposes. Because sometimes they do give you vehicles and equipment and other things, and it happens with the fire department as well. And so, you would want to have something in writing saying that the city formally accepts this and takes responsibility for whatever it is.
So can you put that piece together for us and,
Yes.
okay, that way we can cover
Can I say
this.
one thing? Here's the deal. If you put that on next agenda, that's fine. All we've done is we're just moving ahead with those things. There's nothing that we can't get out of this agreement at any point, be it training or the donation of the animal. The animal can always go back to its previous owner. So we're not locked into anything, but we have to move forward with anything that goes toward training and any other things like that. So that's why. So if it comes up on the next agenda and it's not approved, then we'll start again.
And for the record, those fully trained dogs run somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000.
You get a dog, this animal here is probably worth about $10,000. The training's worth another $9,000. So if it's a program we want to start in the future, and it's something that the city needs, guys, it's up to y'all. I'm just police chief, trying to make this thing run. If you decide we don't want it, then I'm good with that. We're gonna keep doing police work.
Mayor, could I clarify one thing for council members? So your city charter allows 3 members of city council to call a special meeting. You would, upon application, and normally what that means is you would in fact You could do it in this meeting, you can make a motion to call a special meeting on a date certain to discuss the police canine, whatever. And if that were to pass, that would be a meeting called by the 3 council members. And that agenda item would be posted, the city secretary would post that for the date and time as the agenda. Okay, and so that meeting would be a special meeting, meaning the special meeting requirements would apply. And, you know, you would meet at that date and time and consider that whatever that item is. Okay?
Real quick, the clarifying, so the dog would be in this, since we're referring to as a tool, body cameras, policy was set by the chief, but I thought that, so
So basically, what I'm saying to you, the decision whether or not you're going to provide body cameras for all the officers and pay for them is a council decision. The policy and procedure on how they are used is a chief of police decision.
but, so he would give that to us, so.
No, he would not give you
Not-
policies and procedures.
Not to us,
Right.
but that will go into the manual that because if someone gets shot or gets bitten, someone else's attorney is going to come to us and ask for what is our policies of how we use the employ the dog. So we've been told that we had some of these things prior to, and we didn't. So I'm asking kind of this, not that we supersede the policies that the police department says, but the chief did give us, or had in his presentation, how this would be deployed and how these things would work out. And I just wanted to clarify.
So that's for information purposes,
Correct.
so that, you know, you have an idea of how it works. Sort of like public education, basically. You know, we're trying to educate the public and the council on how this works, especially when you have someone new. But I can tell you that, and I don't want to continue this discussion because the chief is now done with his report, but the chief of police, sticking on the department, the police department, when he came on board and I was here, he had a number of policies and procedures he wanted to update that direly needed updating. And so he had a plan to attack this one, and try to get through all of those that he identified needed to be updated. And so he sought legal review. He also, looked at the police associations, the Texas Association and the National Association, and what they were doing. And so we had multiple conversations to ensure that it was really tight and that it limited any liability. But that's not the only thing that has to happen, because as with any policy, even when you have your personnel policies, if you don't train the employees on it, if you don't follow up to ensure that there's oversight, you can have great policies in place and an employee can go and create a liability to the city. So it's just one component of liability, is what I'm saying.
So we can't, to hire an employee, do all employees, whether it be a police officer, do they have to come to council? To hire an employee?
You have a personnel policy that was adopted, I believe, 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, that describes a hiring process. And so the former process that used to be in the code ordinances, which was about 25 years or 30 years old, was no longer what was to be followed, it was what was in the personnel policy that we adopted. And I can't quote it without looking at it because it's been a while.
Next item, E, ordinance violations. Anything, Councilwoman? Okay. And the only thing I want to report on regarding public works has to do with, and we put pictures here, we had, and we've had before, we've got an inordinate amount of work going on in the city, repairs that need to be made and things of that nature. And it has reached a point where when one of the public works guys is either on vacation, we actually had two at the same time who wound out being out with funerals. So the picture that you see is me with our lone public works guy in the ditch assisting because somebody had to hold a pipe in finalizing a connection with water on a Sunday about 4 o'clock. But again, that's just to show, and you'll see later on as a result of that, there was a hiring that will come to council for approval. But that hiring came about because we've got work to do. We're doing ordinance citations and violations, and the city was as out of in violation as some of our people. And because while the people are doing the water repair, sewer repair work, or extensions, connections, all those type of wonderful things that have been taking place, the grass wasn't being cut. And then I realized that previously, several years ago, the city had someone they hired just to cut grass. So it's all of these type of things that that came about. But again, that's the public works part that I wanted to share. City council reports. Councilman Rowland.
Citizens, thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to serve and continue to stay busy. We had yesterday we had two of our Boy Scouts get their Eagle. Yesterday, the program was held on campus. The Prairie Chamber of Commerce meets on the 4th Thursday of every month. Please come out and participate.
Councilman Jones.
Citizens, thank you for the opportunity for me to serve. I've been working diligently. I do come to you guys with a saddening report upon the University Drive project. I'm trying to get some of the citizens reimbursement. TxDOT has sent me some information upon the reason why citizens will not be reimbursed for some of the things that they have to buy to keep themselves safe and healthy, is because they passed some kind of guidelines to basically where it said that it wouldn't harm you, that is what they use, like it's usual when they do construction work and things as such. But I told them that we have a little bit more seasoned citizens than youth, and so sometimes that could be more harmful to those. And he still sent back the same email, so I truly do apologize upon that. But as always, it's a grateful opportunity for me to serve. Thank you.
Councilman Williams. Councilman Wallace.
So I've been working with the Prairie Chamber of Commerce, trying to continually help economic development in the city. And as I always say at every meeting, I encourage those in the Prairie Chamber of Commerce to go to Economic 4B meetings. Those in Economic 4B go to Prairie Chamber of Commerce meeting and come to City Council. That way we can continue to work together. Because I think one thing that the city needs to establish is collaboration, communication, and processes. And if we're not there in the same room, discussing the same things, hearing the same things, and having the same conversation, it's hard to move forward as a village. So, and also, just as regular citizens, I invite y'all to come out as well to give your input. I've been working, so Tuskegee Institute, one thing I realized was, especially after talking to ex-mayor Frank Jackson, he was a historian of the city. And so I asked him, where can I find a lot of this history to the city, because I feel like it's important to preserve, how the city was started. He said a lot of information is at Tuskegee Institute. So I'm working, I actually reached out to a guy in Tuskegee, he gave me some contacts, so I'm working to bring a lot of that information back here so we can have it solidified, so for those that come after us and for those that are here now can know how the city started and those that helped build the city. I've been working with the CERT program. I was challenged at the EMT meeting to help bring students as well, so I got a couple students that want to get trained, so my goal is to get them trained so that they can help the city in any way possible during emergencies. work to get the interlocal agreement with Councilmember Jones. That can help us, choose which roads is between us and the city and in the county. That way we can start working on the streets to help improve the city infrastructure. I also went to Commissioner's Court. One thing I love about Commissioner's Court, so Commissioner's Court is every week on Wednesdays. And one thing, if you go to their meeting is very efficient, straight to the point. And one thing I talked to one of the commissioners and say, what is one way that their meeting is so efficient? They said, because even though their meeting is every Wednesday, they get it way before 72 hours. That way they can get the questions together, contact the people necessary, and get all the information so that the meeting is efficient. So there's little to none dialogue unless there is something where an outside entity has to come and speak. They get through it very fast. So, I hope as a city that we can get to that point where we are efficient, that we get the information, in a proper amount of time to move forward. And also, just to let y'all know, they said the burn ban is still on throughout the county, the burn ban, so you can't go and burn large amounts of fire at this time of the year. And lastly, I've just been working on getting some of the processes of the city together. Been talking to Bureau Veritas, trying to get that building inspection process down. That way, when more structures and more businesses come, then there is a follow procedure. So a lot of the speculation and curiosity that we have can already be documented, so we can move things forward. But once again, it's a pleasure to serve. I want to thank y'all for coming.
Thank you, Councilman. In the interest of time, my report is written on the agenda, so I'm going to move to item number 5. Item 5, discuss, consider, and take action to approve Mayor Allen's employee emergency. But the emergency I think we need to take out because while I felt that if you would scratch through emergency hiring of Eric Ravago in Public Works, as I touched on it, from a necessary service continuity in running the city, our grass is totally out of line, and it becomes a real situation when we're finding residents or sending them 10-day notices for tall grass and weeds, and half the city has tall grass and weeds. We're responsible for all the easements, everything outside of the county and state roads. We're responsible for maintaining. Our guys have been extremely busy. Some of you have seen them doing a lot of the different work. All the connections on any new project, whether it's the beautification or any of these other things, we're responsible for doing per our city ordinances. So while this wonderful work is coming in, we've got to make the connections in addition to doing all the repairs, and the manpowers that we have was just not working. As someone is either out sick or ill due to a death or vacation, what we have is just not appropriate. So this gentleman was brought on to help because we happened to have 2 people at that time that were out on death leave. Mr. Villanova, his mother passed, and Mr. Glover had a death in his immediate relations as well. So this is for the council to do with what you will. Councilman Rowland.
So I'm trying to get clarity because is Mr. Ravago,
Yes.
is he currently hired under emergency hiring?
In what I thought was emergency, yes.
Now, the question is, in our policy, an emergency hiring, it says it has to be what is an emergency, and it's not up to it shows what a temporary emergency.
Are you asking?
Yes, yes. So in
I looked at this agenda today, and my recommendation is that this is an item where you would ratify an act of the mayor to hire an individual because of service continuity and necessity, which if you chose not to ratify the hire, the gentleman would be entitled to be paid for any hours of work that he has already done, and he would no longer be working for the city. So if you did not approve this item.
So I guess, so it's the two questions. The mayor made a temporary emergency thing, which he can do temporary hire for 30 days, one time.
But it wasn't, so in terms of whether or not the emergency qualifies, I would not characterize it as an emergency. But I would say if you do, there are circumstances where you have a business necessity that you have to act for service continuity because you don't have a lot of people that work for the cities. So that part, the mayor has to act. It's a circumstance where he has to decide, do I have to have someone out there doing whatever that is? Should I hire a contractor to do it or actually hire an employee to do it?
The reason why I ask is because, so it's like a two-part process, I think this is saying, and I want to get clarity. We're ratifying what has already been done, which is that 30-day, which falls off. Or is the mayor asking to hire this person in Public Works? And so I wanted to be clear on what he described versus what's on this paper.
Well, it's a combination. At that time, it was a necessity for service continuity, but unfortunately, because of the situation we find ourselves in, the increase in activity, the repair work, the service continuity situation still takes place. We have 3 guys who are due vacation time, and their work's going to have to be covered. We've got development going on all around the city. On all of our edges, we've got new connections we still haven't been able to get to, and the experts that do that are typically the ones who do a lot of the grass cutting. So in maintaining the city, we just haven't been able to do what we need to do with the increased activity. And as someone mentioned, there's maintenance in the city we just haven't been doing. And now we're at a point where we're trying to do it, we're trying to make residents do it, and that's where we are now. If they're in violation, so are we, and we have to address that. But that's council's call. Councilman Jones.
Are all 3 public work guys going on vacation at the same time?
No. They're not all getting sick at the same time, but when they're all here, we are short on our city maintenance responsibilities. That's where we are. Councilman Rowland?
Mr. Mayor, you
Yes.
are describing the increased work volume in Public Works. We have asked before, and since you're the over Public Works, and we also have USW, do you have the correspondence, the information for us to be able to make an informed decision on why we need to add this new employee, which is going to cost benefits? Do you have that information for us at this current point? And then do you think moving forward, because this is about the emergency 30-day temporary hire, was it just to, again, spruce up the city because school is getting ready to start back and we need to do this one time? Or can you kind of explain us those two things?
Sure. We've issued somewhere in the neighborhood of over 100 10-day notices. The majority of them are for tall grass and weeds. In driving around the city with the weather and our good growth grass, we're as in violation as a city as most places are. And for us to hold residents accountable and us not to be able to do it, but let's go back to your first question. I like that one much better. If you look at this sheet that I gave council, what I have had in the roughly 18 months or so, since January 11, 2016, I've had our public works guys documenting every single work repair order. And if you look at, and the reason I had them doing that was because to justify, we went from 2 to 3 workers. We used to have a public works supervisor, and I saw with what we needed doing, we needed 3 workers, not 2 workers and somebody overseeing them. So I took on overseeing them, public works supervisor. And in documenting, they're able to show if they're laying new lines this is typically what the person doing that would charge. So they have some very close figures, especially Mr. Silver, who's been working in that area over 20 years. He was actually with Severn Trent overseeing our city several years ago. So that's the kind of experience that he's got. I'm not asking you anything, Mr. Leverett. If you look at this last page, it shows that documented running total number with itemized repair, extension, all that stuff, shows $564,282. That's what our workers doing that work in-house have saved over what we were paying when I came at $2,000, $4,000, $6,000, $8,000 repair bills. So when you say justification, this is the work they actually do. This doesn't include cutting grass. This is actual work. Oh, when I finish, okay? When you look at the work that they've done, all of this repair work, extension, new connections, with all of that stuff, this is physical work that we were writing checks for to independent contractors. Now that's being done in-house, it's just being tracked and it's available for all councilmen, and this is not, last time I showed it to you was at just under $300,000. But when we say this is what's going on, and when you look around and you see what's taking place, this gentleman is somewhere, Ms. Dickey, I believe it's $12 an hour, something in that neighborhood. So in addition to helping them when they need help, or when one of them is out, as Mr. Villanova was with his mother's death, we've got another hand. When they're working on these type of projects, he's able to use our zero-turn lawnmower and keep our city easements and city property cut and maintained. I hope that answered your question. Yes, sir.
JJ, is the city fully employed?
It probably works.
Yes, sir.
Councilman
Wallace.
I have not got the pleasure of meeting Mr. Robago, if I'm saying it right. I know all of our public works guys, they have certain credentials which make them, qualified to do it, which is why we hired them. We have not been getting any information on who this guy is, how you got connected with him, how he was liable enough to be hired in an emergency, an emergency capacity in which you did. Do you have any information for that?
We do. We had the application, but he knew how to drive a lawnmower. That's all we had him doing initially. But to answer your question completely, because it's a valid one, I have no problem if council wants to table, carry it over. We can bring out his application and that sort of thing, and so I don't have a problem with that. My job as mayor is I'm required to bring information in front of you. This is in front of you. If it's not complete, I don't have a problem withdrawing. We can carry it over like so many things were last meeting, and we can put it on a subsequent agenda if that be council's wishes. Councilman Jones.
I'll move that we disapprove Mayor Allen's emergency hire of Eric Robago in Public Works Department.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that council disapprove Mayor Allen's hiring of Eric Robago in Public Works. You've heard the motion. Ready for the question?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
you made, we need to get some updated information. The information that you talked about and what you gave us, this is of new things that are coming. When we're in the middle of getting ready to go into budgets in September 30th, and we're talking about bringing on an employee, we're asking for the information of you. We have 3 people in Public Works, and the roles of what they're doing in Public Works based upon bringing on a 4th person. How much it's gonna cost, the long-term things. That's what that's the information we need, not just these hookups saying that this is the potential. So again, this is not the first time. So my unreadiness is that when we bringing on another person, so you'll be speaking for Public Works in our budget that's coming up in a week. When we start to talk about adding additional people, we'll have an opportunity to go through Public Works budget and to find out if we, are we negative in Public Works? Are we running a deficit? and we're gonna bring another person on, which is gonna bring the budget item even lower. And so those are the things that we want to discuss at the 50-foot level. We don't want to get into the weeds with it, but what we're saying is an emergency hire was made for someone to cut grass. It was an emergency, and so if we need to add this person in Public Works, would be a fourth person, if you would have that information for us at the budget, during our budget period.
Okay, this is not new. It dates back to January 2016. It's an ongoing report. It's not the first time you've had a copy of it, Councilman, but it's not new. I just want to correct your statement. It's not new. It's been going on for well over a year and a half. Yes, we've just been tracking it, and I just showed you the last page with the bottom line total. Yes, Councilman.
I have a question for council. If this item was tabled, would that mean that he technically is not hired because it's tabled?
He wouldn't be hired, but as I said, any hours worked, he would have to be paid. So if he performed any work for the city, he'd have to be paid.
But if it's tabled, he's not technically hired.
No, he's not hired as an employee. Right now, he sort of has a temporary status.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
And excuse me, I don't have, this is all we got. This is one paper.
I'll be glad to give you my copy since this is your first time seeing it. It's not a problem.
I'll call for the report.
It's been called for the questions, all in favor of, and I guess in repeating the motion. How was that, Councilman Jones? I don't want to say yours. To disapprove Mayor Allen's hiring of Eric Ravago in Public Works Department. All in favor of disapproval? Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
I break the tie. I voted in favor of. Next item.
It's not,
Well,
it
hold
means
on.
that it's not approved.
The motion was to disapprove, so if you vote in favor of the motion, you're voting to disapprove your own hire.
Thank
So
I voted to hire.
No, that's.
we have to call for another
Okay.
motion,
So I
since that
voted-
one,
I
yeah,
vote against it.
you have to call
Okay.
for another motion.
He got,
I vote against it.
hope this, he carried that motion. He-
Well, he's clear, he was voting for the opposite, there was a misunderstanding. So,
I made it clear
you have
that he
not
was
moved on
hired.
to other business,
Okay.
so he can do that, because you have not
Okay.
moved forward with other business.
Item 6.
So where are we at with
discuss-
that?
Can we clarify what
So-
the decision made?
No action, it's basically,
No
nothing
action,
has
like, it's the
happened
one.
to
Right,
to
there's no-
determine the status of this person.
So he's not hired, correct?
He's not
Correct.
hired, that's correct.
And so his 30 days, after 30 days, it just runs out because he can only do it one time, correct?
Theoretically, yes,
In our,
but it depends on the determination as to whether or not there is necessity. So I have to give you a caveat to that,
in our,
depending on
so,
what the person is doing. And I think you should sort of think of him as